Yeah, there it is. But for me, it is one of the most important things to begin Savitri, because Sri Aurobindo tells us who each of these characters truly are. May I read it?
Yes, please, please.
The tale of Satyavan and Savitri is recited in the Mahabharata as a story of conjugal love conquering death. But this legend is, as shown by many features of the human tale, one of the many symbolic myths of the Vedic cycle. Satyavan is the soul, carrying the divine truth of being within itself, but descended into the grip of death and ignorance. Savitri is the divine word, daughter of the sun, goddess of the supreme truth, who comes down and is born to save. Aswapati, the lord of the horse, her human father, is the lord of tapasya, the concentrated energy of spiritual endeavor that helps us to rise from the mortal to the immortal planes. Dyumatsena, lord of the shining hosts, father of Satyavan, is the divine mind, here fallen blind, losing its celestial kingdom of vision, and through that loss, its kingdom of glory. And now comes perhaps the most important part to me. Still, this is not a mere allegory. The characters are not personified qualities, but incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces, capital F, forces, with whom we can enter into concrete touch. And they take human bodies in order to help man and show him the way from his mortal state to a divine consciousness and immortal life. Sri Aurobindo. It is so important to realize that they are incarnations or emanations of living and conscious forces, and they take human bodies just to help us. Incredible beginning. So, to all of you who have read this or heard this many times, we have to awaken to the fact that they are living and or conscious emanations with which we can be in touch with constantly. And if I may say before we begin, that Sri Aurobindo has used so many Vedic and Upanishadic references that I am so grateful that we have Vladimir here to help us with these. He's our Sanskrit scholar, PhD, and I know that we will come across many, many of these Vedic references that he can shed light on for us. Who would like to begin?
I think the best way would be that you start reading. You always kind of open the passage. Now, we did this in such a way that we read, like, for example, some, like half or less than half, 1/3 of the page, yes? Whenever it is a full stop, like, for example, 3 sentences where there is a meaningful portion.
And that's what Nilisha and I do also. And I think it works very well. And then you will, then we will all read it or discuss it. How do you work?
It would be better to look into the meaning first. Maybe some words are not clear. The idea is not clear, what it means, what he wants to say. If that is there to be discussed, then it is discussed. If not, then we read. but there will be always something to clarify. And I would encourage everybody to really put questions forward. And even if we don't have the answers, we will look for them and we will try to figure out what it means.
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, the first sentence, of course, has been spoken of thousands of times. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost one felt, opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. Oh, there's so much to speak about here.
Mm.
You want to begin?
Oh, yeah, please, if you have, there are presumptions which I'm very interested in. Why he says, yes, what is this divine event with capital E and
Exactly, the capital E of divine event.
right.
For me, the divine event is the coming of the divine into the earth.
Right.
This divine event that Mother and Sri Aurobindo have precipitated with the supermind has to cross this foreboding mind of night, because it is across that path of the divine event,
Mm-hmm.
that mind of night. And do you want to say something about the first line?
Right. Also, it's the whole. It's so, how to say, pregnant with meaning there. The hour before the gods awake. So, what is that hour? There was something, some creation, the first round of creation, and the fallen emanations into their opposites, as Mother describes. And this, it was before even the second stage of creation came into being, before the gods came into existence.
Exactly. And before they awake, it is said when the gods awake, there is light. I don't know if you agree with that.
Mm. Right, right. And that's the view of also of the Bible. The God says, "Let it be light," but that means the creation in the Bible. We are always thinking about this. Started with the second stage, in the whether it is viewed that from the night came from the shining truth. So. So the beginning was the light, then the night came into being, and then again there was a awakening of light within the night. That's why across the path, and night was not there from the beginning. You see, it is across the path. Path started with the light. Then there was a night across the path, which we have to cross and come. From light we come, and to a light we go, he says. You remember there is a passage in Savitri.
Yes.
We come to her from the supernal light. By light we live, and to the light we go. And into light we go. Yes.
But this foreboding mind, foreboding, does everyone understand the word foreboding?
And kind of anticipating, or maybe even
well, I don't want to advertise anything.
no, please, you have to
I have the lexicon of the infinite mind.
Right.
The title of this came from a line in Savitri. And my wife, Mary Helen, and I worked for some years to develop this book. And all of you who are listening here, I will donate the book to you. So foreboding mind of night. It is generally a little negative in its sense. When something is foreboding, it may be coming, and we're a little bit concerned about it, this foreboding mind of night. And it's huge. It's a huge night. But it's alone in her unlit temple of eternity and lay stretched immobile upon the margin of silence. And then he begins with a new section that almost one felt, almost opaque, not clear, impenetrable, impossible to get through, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse. Now, an eyeless is a very interesting word. Kemi used to tell me that eyeless was not without eyes, but unseeing. And she would always say it's an unseeing muse. The abysm, and we know what abysm is, of the unbodied infinite. And so at this point, a fathomless zero is occupying the world. Do you understand it, Vladimir, as our world or all the worlds?
I think all the worlds, in my view, but it could be psychologically any world in which we are, yes, in a way. The fathomless is the beginning of creation, in a way, as Mother described it.
And so the Big Bang has not occurred yet.
Not yet, no.
Right. Would someone else like to read the next lines? Elisha?
Okay.
May I suggest something before? I would like us to maybe after examining the passage, what we do in our section, in our group from which we also read Savitri, we read the passage, every one of us, this passage, with the meaning which was kind of found by us or clarified with the words and everything, and it settles the whole thing within consciousness. It's really, we are not in a hurry to read. Yeah.
No.
If we take one page for an hour, it's really good pace.
So each one will read that passage.
Yeah, whoever wants, who is to read the same passage you read, and to read it few times, like 3, 4, 5 times, the same passage, everyone. You will hear different articulation, different meanings in everybody's eyes, and it adds to the meaning.
Now we should read the title also.
Right. Okay, so shall we read then?
Vladimir, can we just maybe discuss a little bit more about this before reading?
Yeah.
So the huge foreboding mind of night. So I'm not sure what that is implying. If it's literally mind as in awareness or consciousness,
Right.
or what is being referred to there, foreboding mind of night?
Right. Interestingly, that he doesn't say that the foreboding is a body of night or something. He says this word mind. Huh?
Yes.
Because it belongs exactly to the consciousness, action of consciousness. The consciousness in light turned into the night. Yeah. So the light turned into the darkness. Darkness is nothing but light which has no contact with the Supreme. It lost its contact. Yeah. It became unconscious in a way. And that zero, that empty vacant space is waiting, it is anticipating, it is shrinking, it is knowing that something is coming. Yeah? But still it is there, stretched immobile upon silence march. and cannot do much. It's across the path. This is the most beautiful, across the path. So there is the path from light to light, and across this night, some kind of forgetfulness of consciousness, of the supreme consciousness, which has to be crossed in a way.
I would like to read a little passage from Sri Aurobindo about this light, because it's something that has been so powerful to me. I memorized it actually, but our sense, by its incapacity, has invented darkness. In truth, there is nothing but light. Only it is a power of light, either above or below our poor human vision's limited range. For do not imagine that light is created by the suns. The suns are only physical concentrations of light, but the splendor they concentrate for us is self-born and everywhere. God is everywhere, and wherever God is, there is light.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So the night, basically, the darkness, is the light which is not having contact or does not remember the supreme, the origin. So this is also light. If we kind of look into that darkness, we will see that it is just another spectrum beyond. That's what you are saying. Actually, everywhere there is light. Only it's our incapacity to see it creates, and that incapacity is referring here to the mind. And this incapacity of consciousness to really perceive the divine.
And he capitalizes night very purposely. We have to be very careful about understanding capitalizations. Nolini once told me that when he capitalizes something, it refers to the essence of the thing. It's not just a capital N. It refers to the true meaning, the essence of night. And again, we have silence capitalized. We have God's capitalized. We have infinite capitalized.
Right.
It was very, very exact about capitalization.
Very interesting. Thank you. This is beautiful. By the way, about Vedic night, maybe a few words. It would be interesting to see Ratri. And you can see, for example, where there is the Rishi Hiranyastupam Girasa invokes the sun, Savitar. He invokes first Agni, then Mitra and Varuna here for the well-being, for the growth. And then he invokes night. Avayami Ratrim Jagato Niveshanim. I invoke night. Who introduces Niveshani, introducer of the worlds. So she introduces here all the souls who are coming. She is the location in which everything will appear. It's our ground on which we will all manifest the divine. So she is introducing souls here. And it's incredible. He invokes night in the Veda, and the night has its own statue. It is this deity. The Aditi is the mother, infinite mother, and deity, the mother of the separating consciousness, where we have this forgetfulness of our connection to the origin, which creates for us the foundation for. And Sri Aurobindo speaks about night in that the Vedic night has two layers. One is starry night, about which he will speak in Savitri. By the way, he also makes the distinction there, the descent into the night and the mother of evil and the sons of darkness. This would be the cantos where we will enter into the greater night. He says that in the Veda also there is lesser night, which is more starry, luminous, closer to us, to our ignorance, in which we can rest. And there is another night, which is deep, deep inconscient night, which is very scary, where things disappear and So that is the greater night, which is below, and that one is very scary to enter. Even Mother speaks about those cantos, that
Yes.
they were quite scary for her to read them.
There are
No,
many.
Vladimir, that was also reminds me when you're talking about the Rig Veda. So the night and dawn, right, Usha and Ratri, they're actually twins. They are said to be twins. And so that tells me, similar to, I think, Narad, which we were saying, is that even within night, there is light. There is the dawn that's somewhere very deep within it. So I don't know if you could say a few words, Vladimir, about these twins in the Rig Veda, but it seems to be applicable to this concept of within, in conscience is consciousness.
It doesn't disappear, it just diminishes in its force. It's still light.
Right. Two twin sisters who are with the same mind, and they have different form, having the same mind, the same objectives. They are two mothers of Agni. They are both feeding our growth of our aspiration. Both are working for their. It's amazing that night and light, dawn and night, are feeding this growth of inner consciousness in us. Because darkness is also needed for this. It is the rest, it is the assimilation of the light. She will be assimilating everything what we got in our, illumined state of consciousness. Everything will sink down into our unregenerated being and will illuminate, will make starry night. And this process is constantly going on. We are coming up into and then we are going down. And this is the process of our growth of consciousness. It cannot go only up, 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 yes? It will always dive deep.
And this is why that powerful line in Savitri, none can enter heaven who has not passed through hell.
Right.
Powerful. So here we see this mind of night is actually, we can make it the second line also. The huge foreboding mind of night is across the path of the divine event. And then we get more of a sense of what is happening. The mind of night is living in this unlit temple of eternity. Again, the temple of eternity, very powerful line, very powerful phrase. And it's stretched, immobile, not moving upon the marge of silence. And then one almost feels the abysm of the unbodied infinite. We have to learn to connect these lines, because Sri Aurobindo, in his letters on Savitri, is very, very clear that each line has to connect with another line and eventually with a phrase, even if it's a long phrase of 15 commas and semicolons, they all have to connect for us to understand it. So,
in this word where he's talking about upon silence, Vladimir, how you speak about the word, how the formation and the manifestation began with the word. That's what came to me when we read this immobile upon silence march. So which is even before the word. That is another thing which states that it is even substantiating the first sentence. It was the hour before the gods awake. So it was even much before the word.
Right. Yes, the word as the expression of that consciousness which will manifest everything here as the light of that, or the will, or the Agni. Agni is the word, yes? He has to be lit, and he will come next. You will see the next in the passage, there will be this kind of stirring of light within the darkness. There will be the birth of that aspiration towards the truth. It's really what I wanted to say also about what you mentioned now about the word and coming down with the gods awake, if we look into Nasadiya Suktam from the Rig Veda, which is very famous, yes, everybody knows this Suktam of the creation. Aurobindo also translated it, and many people always refer to it, that at the beginning there was nothing at the beginning. Yeah? There was neither what was or Nasadiyam Suktam is there was not being, not being. There was nothing. Yeah? Even non-being was not there. So, and the same process, if you read this, the symbol dawn and Nasadiya Suktam, you will find that something in that inscrutable darkness stirred. There would be the same story, this unthought idea. There's something which is going far beyond in the Nasadiya Suktam. But what is interesting is the end of it, where it is a question, who knows where this world is coming from? The question, the last. The gods were not there, the answer. Look at this. There was the hour before the gods awake. The gods were not there at the beginning. Then who can say about this world? Who knows where it comes from? So there was no consciousness to perceive it, because this fathomless zero occupied the world. How can you speak about it? There was no consciousness within to say that it is there. So, and then it says, maybe he who is in the highest heaven, Adhyaksha, the one who supreme, can say, or maybe even he doesn't know. He cannot say. And this is the end of the hymn. Maybe even he doesn't know. And that was striking me, because how come that he doesn't know about it? He must know about it. But then it struck me, but in that darkness, he really doesn't know. In that darkness, inscrutable darkness, he really does not know himself anymore. As if, he lost that contact, the consciousness lost contact with himself. And that's why he cannot even say, also on that ground. So it's a very profound topic to psychologically think about it, what it means, the night. But Aurobindo gives this sign immediately across the path. This is the thing. It's not from the beginning. Night is not our beginning, as he says, and not our end. We come to her from the supernal light. By light we live, and to the light we go.
Even in Christianity, we have the saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh.
Right.
So the Word actually took manifestation. And I think that we hear from Mother very often that the divine wanted to know himself and experience himself in a million ways, in millions and millions of ways. And therefore he created this universe.
Yeah, this night will be separating this oneness into many different detailed manifestations. So we perceive him, we objectively can see all his infinite details, infinite qualities, infinite properties, in time and space.
Even contradictions.
Even contradictions, yeah, which are looking like contradictions because this night is allowing it. Yeah, it gives a gap between him and him, so to say, and he can view himself and you in different way. This is what that's why we are crossing that field. And the crossing of the field of night, again, if we are coming to the Vedas and the Upanishads, we have this in the Isha Upanishad. Yes. Avidyaya mrityum tirtva vidyaya mritamashnuti. By avidya, by ignorance, mrityum tirtva, having crossed death, Death in this case is the field of that night where we disappear constantly. There is a gap. Having crossed the field of death by ignorance with a partial consciousness, by full consciousness, vidyaya, by full knowledge, amritamashnoti, he enjoys immortality. So this is our passage. We carry within ourselves that light. By light we live. We enjoy immortality in this mortal state, crossing the field of night. Again, this across the path. There is a field to be crossed. There's something to be gained through this journey. And this is the beautiful image.
To me, what it makes me think is putting the two together, and what Narad said, like you said, how the word or he who is the supremmost did not also know, and now you are talking about how it also had to cross that path of ignorance, and how Narad said one has to cross through that night to understand that light. So for him also to reach that heaven, to reach that stage, he had to go through the ignorance or go through that hell for him to know later.
Yeah, to manifest that aspect of light in a particular unique way, night is needed. It allows you to be uniquely manifested. Not in the way how he was there, and he is there always, but in a unique manifestation. That's why both of them, these two mothers of dawn and night, are feeding the growth of Agni within ourselves. All right. I think it would...
Can I just comment something before we go on? So this very first sentence, it was the hour before the gods awake. So I find it very interesting that Aurobindo uses the word awake. Mm-hmm. And it's almost like, to me, instead of awoke, that they awoke once and forever, this use of this awake seems to me it may be the individual level, the psychological level, that this darkness overcoming us and finding the light and the darkness and the night, the morning, the dawn, the sunset, the night again, that maybe these are psychological cycles that individuals go through, birth after birth, birth after birth. You see what I'm saying? That this is a continuum. I know it may not, as we read on, this may not be exactly what the storyline here says, but it just gives me the sense of a cyclical nature that we all go through birth and death. Does that make sense, what I'm trying to say?
I intuitively also feel there's something there. What do you think, Narad? Why awake? It was the hour before the gods awake, not awoke, actually. It's quite a...
Yeah, for me, awake is the most important aspect. And you see, he uses the word hour. Hour does not mean hour.
Right.
It could be an eternal hour. Right. So in that eternal hour, the gods are not yet awake. The manifestation has not begun. It's still to come, and we will see that as we go along. Maybe someone could begin to read it again, the passage.
Sure. Okay, I will start then. Yeah? And then whoever wants to read, please, next join. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable, in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world. Elisha, would you like to read, or someone? Or
I can read. The same paragraph?
Yes, the same.
Okay.
the symbol dawn. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world.
Prema?
Yeah, I would also. It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the sober symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the unbodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world.
Radha, would you like to read? No?
It was the hour before the gods awake. Across the path of the divine event, the huge foreboding mind of night, alone in her unlit temple of eternity, lay stretched immobile upon silence marge. Almost one felt opaque, impenetrable in the somber symbol of her eyeless muse, the abysm of the embodied infinite. A fathomless zero occupied the world.
You all say immobile. I say immobile. I heard it immobile, and I come to used to it. It both ways can be pronounced. Yes, immobile and immobile. Narad, do you know? You say
I say immobile, but we can. What Nilisha and I do very, very often.
The beats.
Go to the British pronunciation. Through Chrome, because we have to remember that Sri Aurobindo was in Britain for those first 45 years, and he would have heard British pronunciation. And of course, then we have to consider iambic pentameter and all of the S's, short, long, short, long, short, long 5 times. Here it is not critical. Lay stretched, immobile upon silent march. And then we can beat it differently. We can beat it so many different ways. So we should look it up every time when we're not sure. We should go first, I think, to the British definition.
The Cambridge Dictionary, it gives the pronunciation as immobile, actually, the UK one.
So nowadays, yes.
Okay.
And that's a very interesting point, because very often we will see in these dictionaries that they will say the word Sri Aurobindo has chosen is archaic.
Mm-hmm.
So tryst is considered an archaic word, and yet Sri Aurobindo uses it often. So we have to take things a little bit with a grain of salt. And, you know, Mother once said to Satprem that there had to be a new kind of English. And she said, maybe even the American, and then she makes a comment, a little negative, but I understand that English is constantly evolving. And Sri Aurobindo chose English because of its evolutionary possibilities. And they say he did not write in English, he wrote English. It's a very interesting quote. So immobile, I can accept also.
Yeah, so immobile, the dictionary says immobile UK and immobile as US.
Interesting.
So we're right in between the two. But it's good. It's good that we look these things up and that we understand the words. I can't overemphasize how important each word is in Savitri. Even and has to be pronounced properly. And we should pay attention to the words also. They are part of the mantra.
Mm-hmm.
They are the mantra. He could have used awoke.
Mm-hmm.
He used awake for a specific reason. He used every word that we can. Don't forget, he made 16 drafts of this first canto. 16 drafts. And he wrote to Amal that as his yoga progressed and he was able to get to a higher and higher point in his yoga, he would recast these sections again and again until he felt they were proper. It's amazing. And he said he didn't write it to write poetry. He wrote it to see how through yogic force it could be put into poetry. It's the greatest thing that has ever been written, people. We have to treat it as so sacred. So sacred.
It was interesting for me also to discover that he uses this iambic pentameter, which was used by Shakespeare mainly in his writings. And
absolutely. And many of the great poems, the great epics, we should say epics here, not poems. Many of the great epics are in iambic pentameter. Even in other languages, it is close to it. The thing is that it is the most powerful of all the meters. Quatrameter is a powerful meter, but iambic pentameter is even more powerful. And I think that Sri Aurobindo says, he says so much when he speaks of overhead poetry. And I know it's difficult to get through that, but it's an incredible, it's actually a letter. And it's a long letter that he wrote to Amal about overhead poetry and what it contains. If we can read letters on Savitri, it would help. Mother wasn't happy with it. She called Amal at one time a moron. But later on, she did tell him that some of the things, because he said to Mother, what about mistakes such as punctuation and things like that, and corrections that were obviously needed? Mother's very strong on that. She says, so you know better than Sri Aurobindo? You know a word that would be better, a phrase that would be better than Sri Aurobindo? She gets into it pretty strongly. We have to realize that this has been written by the avatar of the supreme, of the supermental. Not just by any poet, although he called himself first a poet, but that was his humility. Okay, we have one more reading, Nelly.
Yeah. All right, so Narad, can you take next passage and we follow you?
The next passage. A power of fallen, boundless self, awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. Probably we need to just take that session.
Yes.
Yeah. What is this power of fallen boundless self? It's boundless. It has no bounds. It's infinite. And it's awake. Between the first and the last, nothingness. It's awake between that. Recalling this tenebrous womb from which it came. And then it turns from the mystery of birth that's insoluble and the mortality of this tardy process of mortality. And then it longs to reach its end in vacant naught.
Mm. So the consciousness in the night actually tried many times to get out of that swamp, as it were, of unconsciousness, of that, state, and every time it failed and fell back, and that's what created.
Therefore, it longs to reach its end in vacant naught. It wants that. Maybe we could even say the silence and the peace of the eternal darkness.
Right. There is some sweetness in this unconsciousness also. There is some kind of rest or something is there. It's when at the end of our day, when we are very tired, we want to sleep and we go to sleep. This is that sleep, to fall into that unconscious state, to disappear, to stop being or something. There's a mystery of this kind of state of unconsciousness in us.
The word tenebrous, what does it mean, anyone? It means dark and gloomy.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else have some comments or could read it?
Somewhere Mother speaks about this, actually. Sri Aurobindo, Mother. Sri Aurobindo speaks about this, that there is a state this is the Mother, sorry. This is the Mother speaks about this, that there is a state in us which kind of tried many times. It's not the first time the creation comes into being. And every time this night tries to get out of that state into the light, it fails. And fails again and again. This kind of manvantaras, kalpas repeat themselves, pralayas, again the beginning, again falling back. And this is that became a kind of a habit, as it were, or the only way how darkness knows itself. It cannot know, it has in itself consciousness longing for light, but it can't reach it, and it always falls back, as it were.
And therefore the insoluble mystery, birth. It can't be solved.
It's a profound kind of psychological state. If we can go deeper into it, we could feel this. It is in our life all the time. Why we sleep half of our life? Because we really can't handle the light of consciousness. We can't be totally, constantly conscious. We need that kind of assimilation. We need rest. We are coming from that darkness. We are the children of that mother of darkness, not only of the mother of light, not only of Aditi, but also of Diti. And so half of us has this tendency to fall back into the inconscient.
Yes, and this power of that we have in us, of fallen, boundless self, which is awake between the first and the last nothingness. It turns from this insoluble mystery of birth and this tardy process of mortality, dying, and it longs to reach its end in nothingness.
Maybe this is also the foundation for mukti, mukti in itself, like an escape from all this tardy process of evolution and mortality and dying and reincarnation and struggle for life and embodiment. And then you need some state in which you are constantly there, or you don't want to struggle anymore. Something like
And this is what Buddha chose.
mm-hmm.
He chose this state.
Vacant not, yes, exactly. Nirvana.
Nirvana, exactly. Nilisha, you could read?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. A power of fallen boundless self awake, between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught.
I noticed something in Nilisha's pronunciations, which I don't have. I say last, and she says lost.
Oh,
Here we have
English
the
last.
coming in.
Right.
What do you say, Vladimir?
I would say last also. It's I have more English. I don't say last.
Yeah, I have to. I think I have to work on that. It's last.
Right.
And then what about rolling the R's? I noticed that many of the ashram people, even Jumur, who have
R.
Yeah.
they use,
Tenebrous.
they wrote tenebrous, yes,
Brus.
tenebrous.
It sounds sweet, rolling.
Yeah.
I think pronunciations add to it. It's like
You mean different pronunciations?
yeah, even different. When we read in Savitri Bhavan with all different nationalities, Frenchies have their own accent, Russians their own. I think it makes it richer in some way. Yeah?
Well, I'm happy to hear you say that, because my feeling, and I've written about it, is that there are as many ways to read Savitri as there are people who love it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nelly, perhaps you could read a little bit to end our session.
Somebody else maybe wants to read Brahma or Radhe. Please go ahead.
Okay.
I also wanted to make a comment on how Vladimir said about the kalpas and vikalpas and rolling cycles. It put me in touch with what Radhe commented about. It was the hour before the gods awake, where she saw it as the cycles. Mm-hmm. So when you said this, I felt a connection there where it's like in cycles.
Mm-hmm. Actually, it is Mother's comment on this, that this is not first time, and it's many times, and every time it failed to come to the divine manifestation, and it has to again fall back and again start. And this is kind of the black hole, as it were, which draws all light into its center to restart the creation, to restart a new attempt again and again and again.
And we have this information very briefly in stories of Lemuria, Atlantis, and other civilizations that were often much further in their progression of material world, material things than we are. And they sunk. And a new creation had to come. But the key that we have to remember always is that there were 6 pralayas, and Mother said there would not be a 7th. There would be no total destruction of this present civilization.
It's very interesting to look into the Indian, because we are in the 7th Manvantara, and in the Kalpa there are 14, so we are in the middle, exactly in the middle. So from Vaivasvata Manvantara, when we move to a next one, all of them, they are called Savarnas, and they have the same name in the Indian tradition. So they are not distinguished as some unique,
Separative, yeah.
So it means they will go uninterruptedly, most probably, one after the other. So there will be no dissolution into the night again.
Yes.
It seems, if I recall, also, Vladimir, that we are not only in the seventh Manvantara, but we're in the middle of the seventh Manvantara, right? So we're at this turning point or halfway point, if you will, which also seems very significant.
That's a very interesting remark, yes.
When the darkness is at its peak, to try to hold on.
Right.
And the light is slowly beginning to demolish it.
Wonderful, great. So shall we read here?
Yes. Prema?
Yeah. Prema Radhe and myself, I will read also.
Good.
A power of fallen boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of immortality, and longed to reach its end in wakened not.
One thing I could share with you from Amal and from my reading and understanding of poetry is that there should be the slightest pause after every line, very slight. And when the line is enjambed, that means the thought carries over into another line. Still, there must be a pause, but we have to make the connection. So this power of fallen, boundless self between the first and the last nothingness is important. So that slight hesitation after each line is very important, very slight.
Yeah, even here, like the huge foreboding mind of night alone in her unlit, there has to be a pause, not alone in her unlit temple.
Oh,
though it is connected in one sentence, there is no comma, nothing, but there has to be this, we have to breathe in before we do the next line.
Yeah.
Yeah, Radha, would you like, or shall I read and you conclude?
Why don't you just conclude?
All right.
A little after.
A power of fallen boundless self awake between the first and the last nothingness, recalling the tenebrous womb from which it came, turned from the insoluble mystery of birth and the tardy process of mortality, and longed to reach its end in vacant naught. All right, wonderful. It was a beautiful meeting. I'm glad that we all came together, lovers of Savitri, around you, Narad, and that you lead us forward so we could go through this most important creation. Yeah.
And I thank you, Vladimir, for the idea, for the concept that we could all be together in a different way, in a way totally spiritual and unified, connecting with each soul, because it is Savitri especially that can do this more than anything else. It can bring us together in a new way with a new consciousness and greater light. Namaste to all.
Namaste.